The portion opens up with the words Vayechi, Yaakov, Be'eretz, Mitzrayim, Sheva, Esrei Shana, and Jacob lived 17 years in the land of Egypt. The number 17 has the gematria of Toiv, which means good, implying that the best years of Yaakov was in Egypt. Even though he was exiled from the land of Israel, because they established a yeshiva to study Torah, and his children and grandchildren grew in the ways of Torah and mitzvahs, this brought Yaakov tremendous pleasure. Before he dies, he says to Joseph, Simna yodcha tachas virechi, place your hand under my thigh. What does this mean? In the time of the Sanhedrin, in the times of a Beth Din, when a person came and took an oath, the oath was associated with holding a Sefer Torah or a pair of tefillin, a holy object, so that you placed your oath upon this holy object, acknowledging that God is the one with whom you are making this oath. Now, before the Torah was given, there was no holy objects. The holy object that they had was the bris, was the covenant that God commanded Abraham to circumcise himself and his children. And therefore, when they made an oath, the only object that they had that was holy, which means that was a mitzvah, was the circumcision. So he says, place your hands under my thigh and swear to me by this mitzvah that you will follow my wish. What should you do? Alna sigbereni b'mitzrayim, I don't want to be buried in Egypt. Why not? Rashi gives us 3 reasons. Number 1, he says, Soifa liyes afara kinim. Yaakov had Ruach HaKodesh. He had divine spirit. And he saw that when the Jewish people are about to leave the land of Egypt, God is going to bring 10 plagues upon the Jewish people. One of them is going to be kinim, which are lice that come from the earth. And those kinim are going to go under his tomb. He did not want to be lying on top of these kinim, and therefore he said, get me out of here. I want to leave Egypt. Number 2, she'ein meisei chutzei la'aretz chayim ele b'tzar gilgul mechilus. And here Rashi reveals a secret of the resurrection of the dead, of Tchias HaMesim. How is the resurrection of the dead going to happen? We know that Rambam says one of the 13 principles of faith is to believe that after Mashiach comes, every single Jew is going to be resurrected. Tchiyat HaMesim. Where is this going to take place? So let's say you're buried in America, or you're buried in Argentina, and you have to get up now for Mashiach. Because he's here, he built the temple, we're now going to come together and be reunited. Where exactly does the Tchias HaMesim take place? Says the Gemara that Tchias HaMesim will take place in the land of Israel. And therefore, all the bodies of all the Jewish people throughout the entire world are going to have to roll, or like a bobsled, go under the ground and come up and stand up in the land of Israel. Yaakov knew this. And he said, I don't want to roll. And I don't want to go like a bobsled. I want to be able to just get up without having to go through this turmoil. And that is the reason till today, many Yidden, many Jews say, I want to be buried in the land of Israel. I don't want to have to roll. I want to be right there in the action and get up first. So this is the second concept. And we know that the Ramban Nachmanides tells us that after Mashiach comes and the souls will return to the bodies, we're going to be that way forever. That is where the Arizal learns in Kabbalah. And the reason is because the body is the vessel in which we perform the mitzvos, in which we perform God's deeds. And because of the fact that we did godly deeds with our body, the only way we can be truly rewarded is if the soul returns to the body. And that is the way we're going to be for all eternity. Young, beautiful, healthy, in our prime. We're never going to get old, no wrinkles, no Botox. Everything's going to be amazing when Mashiach comes. Okay, so that's what Yaakov Avinu says. And number 3, very important. He did not want that the Egyptians should turn him into an idol. Now, Yaakov Avinu, being the son of Yitzchak, being the son of Avraham, knew they had a mission. And the mission is the mission of every Jew. And that is to be a light unto all the nations of the world. Wherever we go, we have to teach. Wherever we go, we have to inspire. Yaakov Avinu was very inspirational. He was beloved by the Egyptian people. And therefore, he inspired them to follow the 7 Noahide laws. One of the 7 Noahide laws is that a non-Jew is not allowed to serve idols. Now, if Yaakov Avinu would be buried in Egypt, he felt that they would use him as an icon and turn him into an idol. There is a law in the Torah, Lifnei iver loy sitei michshol. Before a blind person, do not put a stumbling block. And therefore, he felt that if he would be there, it would be a challenge. After knowing the greatness of Jacob, he was afraid the Egyptians would serve him. And therefore he said, get me out of here. I want to go back to the land of Israel. So you have these 3 reasons of why Yaakov asks his son Joseph, and then, as we will soon see, asks him for the oath, to take an oath, so that he will go back to the land of Israel at that moment, at that time. The Torah goes on to say, V'shachafti im avoisai unesasani mimitzrayim. Yaakov says, I want to be buried with my forefathers, and I want you to take me out of Egypt, lift me up from Egypt. Ukvartani b'kvurasam, I want to be buried in the Marat HaMachpelah, in the Hebron. At this moment, Vayoimar, and Yosef already says, Anoichi, I will do chidvarecha, as you have requested. So Yosef, listen, at that moment agrees to follow Yaakov's wish. But yet the Torah goes on to say, Vayomer, Yaakov says it's not good enough. I trust you, my dear son, and I know that you're an honest person, and I know that you're reliable because you're the viceroy of Egypt. You get things done. However, Hishav ali vayishav aloi. I want you to take an oath. I want you to swear to me that you are going to take me out of Egypt. And Joseph swore to him. And this is the question today. Why is it that Yosef was required to swear to Yaakov? Why wasn't his word good enough? Now, many commentaries at this point say the reason was as follows. The reason why Yaakov wanted Joseph to swear is because Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and the most powerful ruler at that time, Pharaoh at that time acknowledged the greatness of Jacob, because when Jacob came down to Egypt, a miracle happened. He blessed Pharaoh. And the blessing was that when Pharaoh would walk to the Nile, the waters of the Nile would rise and irrigate the entire land of Egypt. Now, Egypt does not have rain. And the way the land is irrigated is through the Nile. So instead of schlepping buckets, Pharaoh would walk there, and the Nile would rise, and the entire Egypt now became irrigated with water. Pharaoh became a god. And so he needed Jacob to be there, because he was afraid that the moment Jacob is transported to Israel, the blessing will be over. So he wants Jacob to be buried in the land of Egypt. Therefore, says the commentaries, Jacob understood this. He told Joseph, take an oath. If you take an oath, Pharaoh will have to acknowledge the oath. And by taking the oath, you will be able to remove me from the land of Egypt. This is what the commentaries say. The problem is, Rashi, the logician of the Torah, who teaches Peshutoi Shal Mikra, the simple interpretation to a 5-year-old child, makes no reference of this concept. He does say this later, by the way, at the end, when Jacob passes away, and Pharaoh tells Joseph, okay, now take up your father like you swore. Over there, Rashi says the following. Over there, Rashi says that Pharaoh tells Joseph, you can take up your father to Israel because you swore to him, you took an oath. Why does the Torah have to tell us this detail? Because there was a deal that Joseph had with Pharaoh. And that is when Joseph was taken out of prison and became the viceroy. Joseph was required to know 70 languages. That was the rule in the land of Pharaoh, in the land of Egypt, that a Pharaoh was required to know all 70 languages. Now Joseph knew maybe Hebrew, Yiddish, a little Maimalushan, maybe Ladino, but he didn't know all 70 languages. Says the Talmud that Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, came to his cell and taught him overnight all 70 languages. Now the next day he comes out, they test him. He knows all 70 languages, but he also knows the 71st language, and that is Hebrew. Pharaoh did not know Hebrew. Now, theoretically, because he knew one more language more than Pharaoh, he had the right to become the Pharaoh. So Pharaoh said, swear to me, you're not going to tell anyone that I don't know Hebrew. He says, fine, I will swear to you. We have a deal. Now that Jacob dies, Pharaoh says, you have to leave him here. Oh, but I can't. I swore to my father. Well, break the oath. Really? Not a problem. I break that oath. I break this oath. I tell everybody I know Hebrew and you don't. Okay, you're right, Joseph. You are brilliant. You got to keep your father's oath and bring up your father to the land of Israel. Now, the problem with this is that Rashi makes this comment later on, at the end of the parsha, not right here. Now, a 5-year-old child, like all of us, we're learning the Chumash. We need to know, why does Jacob make Joseph swear? Joseph already gave his word. He was an honest person, and no question that Jacob trusted Joseph. Why does he make him take an oath at this moment? And we can't rely on Rashi's interpretation later, because he says it later. So right now, what should we be thinking? And the answer is, we have to think the definition of an oath. What does it mean to take an oath? And Rashi trusts us that we know the answer. We know the definition. There are two very important factors when we talk about an oath. Number one is, when you take an oath, you have to do it. In other words, there's something called a haftocha. Haftocha means, I guarantee. I guarantee I'm going to do it. It's not an oath, but it's a strong commitment. So, till now, Yosef makes that commitment. He makes that haftocha. I guarantee I'll take you out. But the problem is with a guarantee that if there are obstacles, and if there are challenges that arise, you have a good excuse. I wanted to do it. I tried my best. I'm sorry, I couldn't do it. You know, we say, your best just ain't good enough. You got to give it your all. The shavua, the oath, demands that our consciousness brings it to the reality that we do everything we can in our power and beyond to make it happen. So that's why Yaakov told Joseph, I want you to take an oath. You're in Egypt. You're a viceroy. You have many, many responsibilities. Problems arise every single day. You'll get carried away. You're going to forget about it. I need you to take that oath. Number two, when you take an oath, it's on your mind all the time. A guarantee means when it's going to happen, I'll worry about it then. Now, I don't have to think about it. The moment you take an oath, it means every moment I need to think about this issue. How it's going to do, how it's going to happen, how will I perform it, etc., etc., etc. And that is why Yaakov Avinu demands of Yosef to take an oath. Now, the question comes to mind, Joseph knew this. He was a brilliant man. And the fact that Jacob tells him, place your hand under my thigh, and Joseph says, yes, I will do according to what you want, already tells us that he understood what was happening. Yet, why does Jacob command him to swear and take an oath. There's a concept called ein chovush materes atzmai. Someone who is in jail, someone whose hands are bound, cannot untie himself. But another person whose hands are bound could untie the first person, even though he cannot untie himself. There is a theological debate that takes place here between Jacob and Joseph. In other words, there's a Kabbalistic quandary that is taking place at this time. And that is, should Jacob stay in Egypt or not? Jacob says, get me out of here. But Joseph deep down wants Jacob in Egypt. Why? Because as the Zohar tells us, he wants Jacob to protect Am Yisrael. He wants the holiness of Jacob to be there, to be a protection for the Jewish people of all generations. He knows that dark days are coming. They know that Jews are going to enter now into slavery. It was already prophesied to Abraham. Therefore, Joseph wants Yaakov to remain there. Now, similarly, the Rebbe once spoke about how the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, who passed away in 1950, was buried here in America. He chose to be buried, even though many great tzaddikim were sent to Israel to be buried. He chose to stay here in America to be together with his children, so that we, Am Yisrael, when we need a place to go and pray, we can go and pray, just like Mama Rachel was buried on the way, so the Jews can pray at her tomb. The previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, wanted to remain here. So Yosef says, I want you to remain here. And Yaakov says, no, I got to go. Why? What's the difference? One is, ein chavush materes atzmai. If you want me to pull you out, I cannot be here together with you. I need to be in another place. Kabbalistically speaking, Yaakov represents the world of Atzilut. Atzilut is the highest of the four worlds. That world is above nature. It's above time and space. It has no association with reality. Jacob, therefore, in essence, was beyond exile. He was beyond Egypt. Even when he was in Egypt, he was not in exile. And therefore, by being above that reality, he has the ability to pull us out of that reality. So, Jacob says, I understand your objective, but for that to work, I need to be somewhere else. I need to be in Israel. I want you to lift me out of Egypt. Now, Yosef, on the other hand, remained in Egypt after he died. He was there together with his children to bring them that protection, to bring them that solace that they needed in a time of pain and suffering, when they needed to go and pray and feel that somebody was with them in their pain and suffering. So Joseph was there. And that is why Joseph was the viceroy of Egypt. Literally, he was in Egypt. The tribes, even though they came down to Egypt, they were in Goshen. They were in like this fancy place, like, the Bahamas. It was away from reality. Everything was great there and beautiful, and they had their own constitution and their own president and their own municipality. They did whatever they wanted. They weren't part of Egypt. Joseph was part of the reality of Egypt. So Joseph says to Jacob, I want you to be here. And Jacob says, no, take an oath that you are taking me out. So this is the concept. What is the lesson? How do we apply this to our daily life? Number one, a Jew needs to know that we don't belong here. In other words, on one hand, we are in Mitzrayim. We are Meitav Haaretz, in the best place. We're living in Brooklyn Heights. We have, Baruch Hashem, good jobs. We have beautiful houses. We have good pensions. We have good babka over here. We have everything we need in America. And it's wonderful. And we pray to God to give us tremendous hachava, to give us wealth, and to give us protection and security, which we have. There was never a time in Jewish history that there are so many yeshivas, so many Jewish institutions, so many synagogues, so many Judaic stores, so many kosher pizza shops, okay? We have everything we need in this world. We even have falafel. Everything you can imagine we have in America, we have in Golus, in exile. And Yaakov said, I had the best years in Egypt. Don't get me wrong. But that is not my place. Unesasani mimitzrayim, take me out of Egypt. And this needs to be the prayer of a Jew every day. Thank you, God. I'm grateful for all the blessings you give me. But unesasani mimitzrayim, this is not our place. Take us out of Golos. Take us out of exile. You have to bring Mashiach. And if we forgot about this promise, we forgot about this mission, October 7th woke us up that we are in Golos, we're still in exile. Number 2. The Arizal says like this. The great Kabbalist Arizal says, you should know, Joseph is a metaphor for God. Jacob is a metaphor for Am Yisrael, for the Jewish people. Jacob tells Joseph, swear to me. We, the Jewish people, take an oath with God. And we say, God, swear to us that you are taking us out of Egypt. We know we have your haftocha. We know we have your guarantee that you're taking us out of Egypt. But we want more than the guarantee. We want to have promise. We want an oath. Why? Because by the fact that God takes an oath with the Jewish people, there are no excuses. It has to happen. A guarantee, well, other things came up. I had to deal with an earthquake, a tsunami. I couldn't, exactly take you out of Gulf. You have a Shavua, God swears to us there's no excuses, no matter how busy he is, he has to take us out of Golos, number 1. Number 2, it's on his mind all the time. It's not when the time will come, on that specific date, in that moment, in that millennia, I will take you out of Golos. No. A Shavua means I have to think about it every moment of the day. And because we ask God to think about it every moment of the day, how he's going to get us out of this mess, how he's getting us out of Golos, we pray every day in our Amidah, Yishu'ascha kivinu kol hayoim. We say in the Amidah, to your salvation. We await all day long, every moment. It's not like we're waiting for it to happen then. Every moment now, we are waiting for your salvation. And our eyes await to see your return, the Shekhinah, to Zion. So this is the message of the parasha. It's not a story that happened many years ago. It's a story that we are living through today, here and now. I want to conclude with one final story that happened a number of years ago here in Shul. There was a Russian fellow who came to America, and he began to pray here in the synagogue. And one day we struck up a conversation, and he says to me, Rabbi, I was never circumcised. I said, really? Not a problem. Let's do it today. He says, now, today? I said, yeah, why not? This minute. I'll call the moil, we'll get it done. He says, okay, Rabbi, give me a few days to think about it, and I'll let you know. So he comes back to me a few days later. Rabbi, I thought about it. We're going to do the bris. Wow. Now this gentleman, Kanahar, is 6'2", about 300 pounds. He's going to do the bris. And he says, Rabbi, I want you to be the sandik. You should carry the baby. So I'm the sandik now, okay? It's a big mitzvah to be the sandik. And we go to the house of the moyel. And he has his fancy white bed over there with a sheet. And he takes out a big pair of scissors. And he gives the gentleman a local anesthesia. And he starts with the bris, and I'm watching this whole thing, I'm praying that he shouldn't miss and get me instead. And he's doing the bris, and begins to sew up the skin, because it's an older person. It's not like a baby, you just put a little bandage. He begins to sew the skin. And I'm talking to him and striking up a conversation. We're talking about different things to keep his mind off what's really happening. And he says to me, Rabbi, I think the anesthesia is wearing off. I said, what are you talking about? It's not wearing off. Yes, it is, Rabbi, I'm telling you. I said, you know what you're talking about? It can't be. I turned to the moyel. I said, moyel. He says the anesthesia is wearing off. He said, well, tell him to hold on a little longer. Because if I have to put new anesthesia, it means I have to wait another half an hour for it to start working, and then I have to let him sit like this for half an hour, and I have to go take lunch and come back. Let's finish it now. I said, hold on strong, close your mind, meditate, and let's get it finished. He said, okay, close his eyes. I'm ready. Do it. And the moil continues to stitch, and Baruch Hashem, he finished. And today he's alive to tell the story. So I turned to this fellow, I said, tell me, what did you think about? How did you overcome the last few moments of pain? He says, Rabbi, I thought about what you taught me. I said, what was that? What did I teach you? He says, you taught me that the Rambam, Maimonides, says, we should always view the world on a scale of 50 good deeds and 50 bad deeds. And one good deed, one final good deed, could tip the scale to salvation and bring Mashiach right now. And I said, God, I pray that my mitzvah right now should be the final deed of Golus. And after this, Mashiach should be standing right here in the room together with us. And that gave me the strength to endure the last few moments of pain. My dear friends, we are seconds away from Geula. We are seconds away from redemption. We have to hold on strong. We have to realize and meditate that any second now Mashiach can come. It's up to us to bring that final blow. It's up to us to do that final mitzvah. Don't give up now. We're about to walk over the finish line. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any question, please write it in the comments.